century BC, where we will meet Alcibiades, a benevolent general and politician who with his actions catalyzed the developments of his time, as for a number of years he managed to survive balancing between the Athenian Lacedaemonians and the Persians. So let's go to present the Politara in his life, which is characterized by impressive adventures, scandals, but also many great strategical feats. 450 mere Christ. His mother was called Deba Battle, and she came from a family of Alcmene species, from which came Cleisthenes and Pericles. His father, named Clinias, had distinguished himself in the past in the naval battle of Artemisium against the Persians in 447 BC. He was killed in a battle in the Boeotian colony, and the 3-year-old Alcibiades was brought up by closely related to his mother's Pericles, so from a young age he was at the center of developments. Developing a strong interest in politics, he was particularly intelligent and easy-going. He also stood out for his beauty, as according to the ancient authors, Alcibiades was considered one of the most beautiful Athenians. He was slow to get in touch with Socrates, and a close friendship developed between them, which was covered by their joint military service. Socrates even saved Alcibiades' life during the Battle of the Potida, meaning 45, defending Socrates in the Battle of the Book. From a young age, Alcibiades, he had also developed an arrogant demeanor, as he embezzled a lot of money from his family's fortune and was philandering literally everyone and everything. Had been created by a company of young people whose only purpose was to have fun. They organized lavish banquets in which they consumed from the region in the company of partners. Alcibiades maintained the same behavior even after his marriage to the present daughter of a rich and powerful Athenian, from whom he made a significant dowry, according to Plutarch. The only one who could restrain Alcibiades and distract him even temporarily from the Socrates was happy in life. In a typical incident from the life of Alcibiades, we learn that once he bought very dearly a beautiful dog, whose beautiful tail he cut off when his friends scolded him, saying that the Athenians were maligning them for what Alcibiades had done. Answer P. Well, what I wanted the Athenians blame me for their dog's tail, and don't deal with the worst things I do. About 420 BC, we have the first election of Alcibiades general of Athens. We are in the period after the first phase of the Peloponnesian War, with thee has died a few years ago due to the deadly pestilence. Alcibiades believed that the peace that had been agreed with Sparta in 421 BC did not benefit Athens, and aimed to provoke a new conflict. For this purpose, initially he pushed the Athenians to support the Argos, which threatened the separatist interests in the Peloponnese. So in 418 BC, the rest of their allies clashed in Mantinea with the Lacedaemonians, who, under the second saintly king, won a glorious victory in the Olympian race. Acquired with transmitter of reasons, managed to tell the Athenians to campaign in Sicily. How long did the preparations for the naval campaign last? A crisis arose in Athens which was to have consequences for both the city and Alcibiades. One morning they did not discover that many of the city's thermae had been mutilated, which were columns that on top of them bore the first god Hermes. Their destruction was a significant case of sacrilege, and many began to suspect some conspiracy to overthrow the democratic polity. They talked about an act of drunken youths in both cases. Suspicions were raised in Alcibiades' circle, as his political opponents presented slave and walled witnesses who claimed that his company had died for them, to the point of even lecturing the Eleusinian mysteries. Alcibiades asked for a court before he started for the examination, but the Athenians decided to leave with the fleet, so in 415 BC he left for the campaign with a large force, which according to Plutarch consisted of 1,435,100 plithras and about 1,300 oxen, and lightly armed in men. While business in Sicily was developing slowly, the political opponents of Alcibiades were taking advantage of his absence. So they decided to recall him back to Athens to stand trial for what was said against him. Alcibiades pretended to accept the decision. How will you return to Athens, following them with their personal fire? But when I arrived near Storius, he disembarked from his ship and escaped, as he knew that Kazan would see him. Based on the complaints of suspects from them, he fled to the Peloponnese, while in the meantime the Athenians sentenced them to death in their absence when he was informed of his death sentence. He exclaimed, "But I will prove to them the animal," that he then fled to Sparta. A fact seemingly understandable, since he had done everything possible to overturn the peace that the Athenians had agreed with. He recovered his powerful weapons, that is, his oratorical skill and his audacity, and managed to let the Lacedaemonians grant him asylum while he remained in Sparta. About his adaptability, Plutarch wrote that there was nothing that Alcibiades could not imitate, and so when he characterized more exploited even than the lame lion, at the same time everything hospitality of the Spartans, providing them with valuable advice on the front. They reinforced the line you heard. So Sparta immediately sent to Sicily as the general of Gylippus, who more effectively organized the resistance of Syracuse against the Athenians. Athens was forced to send new reinforcements to Sicily, thus increasing its losses, as your final campaign resulted in a big fiasco. Alcibiades also advised the Lacedaemonians to occupy and fortify Decilia at north of Athens, and to use it as a base. The Athenians, after its capture in 413 unchallenged, now permanently felt the pressure of the Spartans and were forced to guard the walls of Nice or sudden attack. But Alcibiades knew well that the defeat in Sicily and the loss of the Decilia were not enough to prove Athens, as in order to win the war, the Spartans had to overthrow the Athenian rule in the Aegean as soon as it became known. There were in Sicily some cities honey of the Athenian alliance defected, and others were ready to follow. Alcibiades fell then them Spartans to send him with 5 ships elements, so that he himself undertakes to organize the defection of the allies of Athens, a mission which he carried out successfully, and while the advice of Alcibiades, the passions that knew it led him to another scandal, as it was revealed how much past he had had love affairs with the wife of the Lacedaemonian king. Saints, at first you have Spartans preferred to face the fact with leniency, recognizing that the guidance of Alcibiades was valuable, but then they gave a secret order, but the Athenian general should kill him in the Spartan ship of all, as you can see. Alcibiades was now outnumbered not only by the Athenians, but also by the demons. The only way out was that he fled, who was a cruel man who hated the Greeks. But even he did not manage to resist the help and the scholasticism of the Greek general. He was even so impressed that he added the name of Alcibiades to the most beautiful of his gardens. Alcibiades once again confirmed his Heliotism as he placed the absolutely luxurious centers friendly lifestyle of the Persians, as expected. What in exchange of hospitality that brings them began to provide him with his valuable advice. According to them here last Saturday, he had to monitor the developments in Greece and strengthen the weak side, thus neither rival could win the Peloponnesian war, and the continued conflict would weaken the Greeks in favor of the Persians. As long as the Athenian general was in concert of Athens, he began to prepare the most daring, perhaps planning his return to Athens. For to achieve this, he took advantage of the state anomaly that occurred in AD 411, when the democratic government of Athens was overthrown by the so-called oligarchy in 400. The new regime was not accepted by all the Athenian men who were in Samos at that time. Alcibiades appeared, who contacted the head of the navy, brazenly promised him his help, and took her away, and in return asked for his full restoration. Soon the oligarchy of 4101 of the first decisions of the new authority was to recall Alcibiades, but he did not. He immediately returned to Athens, as he wished to return with glory which he would gain after successful military operations, and indeed during the next period, he starred in a series of naval successes of the Athenians against the Demons. In the meantime, he visited that he wants you by presenting him with rich gifts for the benefit of Athens. This time he arrested them and imprisoned him in Artis. But a month later Alcibiades managed to escape and immediately returned to his duties as one of the Athenian commanders. In all of 410 BC he starred in the naval battle of Anzigo, where his clever strategy combined with the help of the brash and the prey led to the crash now, and Demon later scoring a series of military successes. He imposed Athenian authority on several Hellespontian cities and collected money for the Athenian coffers in 47 BC. 4 years after his recall, Alcibiades decides that it is the most appropriate time to return to Athens. At first he was afraid and cautious. But in Piraeus many of his fellow citizens had gathered who gave him a warm welcome. Then he spoke in the town church, where he claimed that he had been wronged by his fellow citizens in the past. No Athenian disagreed with him, and come if you ruler, emperor, that is, general. You found me in power. However, the Athenian general had a very capable opponent. The Lacedaemonian Lysander Alcibiades went with the Athenian navy to the Aegean to deal with him. But he ordered the error to abandon the fleet for a while, leaving as his replacement Adios, whom he forbade to fight during his absence. But Antiochos defied his order and clashed with Lysander in the south of Ephesus, as a result of which he was defeated or charged to Alcibiades, and his political opponents succeeded in deposing him. He managed to escape for the umpteenth time by fleeing the Euthracian peninsula in the area of the Propontis. Soon the Athenian fleet was in the Hellespont. The Athenians silvered the Aegos in while opposite the Lampa, where Lysander was with the ships. Alcibiades was near the area and noticed that the Athenians' volley was in place. He immediately visited the Athenian camp and warned the generals who, however, treated him with contempt and ordered him to leave. A few days later, Alcandros crushed the Athenians by surprise attack at their anchorage. Alcibiades' prediction was once again correct. Without naval power, Athens could no longer continue the war, and so in 4004 AD, it was forced to surrender. After the end of the Peloponnesian War, Alcibiades goes to the refrigerator, where he approached the last year. He will be drawn to Pharnavazo with a higher goal in the future to bring him in contact with you. Know something which did not happen, as in 44 BC Alcibiades was murdered in a small city of Plagia, where he lived with his mistress the Timantra. It is unknown who is responsible for his murder, as with so many enemies he had in Athens, Sparta and Persia, there were many who wanted him dead. According to one version, Pharnavazus, at the request of Lysander, was the one who sent people to assassinate him. They set fire to his house, and when he ran out with the stick in his right hand, they killed him with spears and arrows. According to another theory quoted by Plutarch, Alcibiades had seduced a woman belonging to a well-known family. Her brothers were outraged the age of Alcibiades, and I hurt him. The only thing certain is that until his last breath he wore the way he had chosen to live, that is, with intense danger and passion. Alcibiades is one of the most controversial and at the same time fascinating figures in ancient Greek history. His life was an uninterrupted cycle, with great alternations of glory and obscurity due to his intelligence and strategic abilities. He was at the center of history during the years of the Peloponnesian War, but he was a hypocritical person without moral scruples. A fact that had disastrous consequences both for him and for his city, Athens. Before closing the video, don't forget to press like to subscribe to the channel and also to share.